When a woman realizes you're no longer interested, something subtle but powerful shifts inside her. She doesn't always react with words, she reacts with awareness. The energy changes and she feels it. Your silence becomes the loudest part of the conversation. This moment, though quiet on the surface, speaks volumes underneath. It's not just about you pulling away, it's about her awakening to something deeper. Today, we're going to talk about what really happens in that moment, emotionally, mentally, even spiritually, and why it reveals more about her strength than you may ever realize. You see, long before a woman ever says a word, she already knows something is off. It's not that you told her you're not interested. It's not in the exact words you used, it's in the little things, the pauses between your messages, the way your voice sounds less engaged, the slight delay in your eyes when you look at her. It's subtle, but it speaks louder than anything you could ever say out loud. Women are deeply intuitive when it comes to emotional connection. They can sense presence just as quickly as they can sense absence. At first, she gives you the benefit of the doubt. Maybe you're just busy, maybe you've had a lot on your plate lately, maybe you're distracted, not disinterested. She tells herself stories to fill in the space you used to occupy, hopeful stories, soft ones, ones that allow her to hold on to the connection a little longer. But here's the truth, when a woman feels emotionally safe with you, she's completely tuned into your rhythm. She notices when that rhythm changes, even slightly, and it doesn't take long before she starts to feel it, not in her mind, but in her body. That weight in her chest, that's your distance, that shift in her smile, that's your silence echoing inside her. She doesn't call it out right away because she's still trying to understand it herself. She's replaying the last conversation, trying to pinpoint the exact moment when your energy shifted. Was it something she said? Did she miss something important? Is it her? That's where it starts, with questions that turn inward, because she wants to believe this connection still means something. And in that confusion, in that swirl of doubt and curiosity, she's not angry yet, she's just aware. Something feels different, something feels colder, but understand this, when a woman notices you pulling away, she doesn't react immediately because she's watching you. Carefully, closely, she's not just hearing your words, she's reading between every line, she's measuring your tone, your timing, your touch. What once felt warm now feels performative. What once felt effortless now feels like effort, and not the good kind. And while you may think you're hiding your fading interest well, she's already picked up on the emotional detachment. She may not say anything, but don't mistake her silence for blindness. She sees it, and something starts to change in her too. Quietly, internally, she's not falling apart, she's pulling herself together. The love she used to pour into you now becomes a question. What am I holding on to? It's not always dramatic. Sometimes, it's in the way she stops over-explaining herself. Sometimes, it's in how she no longer asks if you're okay, because she knows you'll just brush it off. Sometimes, it's in the way she starts pulling her energy back piece by piece. You might think you're in control, being the one who lost interest. But here's the twist, once she realizes it, she starts making peace with it. And once a woman starts making peace with your absence, she doesn't fight for your attention. She starts paying attention to herself. This moment, this recognition of your distance, isn't just about a relationship cooling off. It's about the awakening of her emotional awareness. It's about the moment she stops fantasizing about what this connection could be and starts confronting what it actually is. And that moment hurts, not because she needs you, but because she was honest about what she gave. She showed up fully. She stayed soft, she believed there was still something real happening, but when she feels the shift, she knows pretending won't protect her heart. So now she's watching, not with bitterness, but with clarity. She's not trying to chase what's slipping away. She's just trying to understand what she's been investing in, and when she realizes it's not being returned, not the presence, not the effort, not the care, she begins the slow but steady process of emotional detachment. She's not dramatic, she's deliberate. That's what many men miss. It's not the loud reaction that tells you she noticed. It's the quiet one. It's when she stops texting first. It's when her tone shifts from hopeful to neutral. It's when she stops asking where this is going, because now she knows exactly where she's headed, and it's not with someone who's unsure about her. This is where your silence becomes permanent, not because you cut her off, but because she finally heard you in the quiet. She heard your disinterest in the way you stopped showing up emotionally, and now she's showing up for herself. And by the time you realize she's truly gone, she's already accepted what your energy told her long ago. She doesn't always react immediately. She doesn't start a fight or ask a dozen questions right away. No, a woman who senses you're no longer interested doesn't jump into confrontation. She steps back quietly, emotionally, mentally. She retreats into a space of observation, and in that silence, she begins one of the most powerful phases of response. She starts watching, not passively, not carelessly, but with precision, and you might not even notice it happening. She watches how you carry yourself now. The little things you think don't matter suddenly start speaking to her louder than ever. The way you scroll on your phone during dinner, the way you say goodnight like it's a routine, not a feeling. The way your eyes don't soften when you look at her anymore. She notices it all, because this is how women process change, not through accusation, but through observation. She's not being paranoid, she's being perceptive. See, women are often portrayed as overly emotional, but what gets overlooked is how incredibly sharp their emotional intelligence is. When they care deeply, and when that care is at risk, they don't just react, they analyze. They take inventory of every signal you're giving off. She's not doing this to attack you, she's doing it to protect herself. She's looking for the truth underneath your behavior, because your words are no longer lining up with your energy. She notices how your routine changes, the delayed replies, the distracted presence, the sudden disinterest in shared moments. She watches how the tone in your voice flattens, how you're quicker to disconnect, and she's not just watching your actions, she's feeling the gap growing between you. That gap where connection used to live now holds unanswered questions, and even though she's not voicing them yet, they echo loud in her mind. And this is where the silent investigation begins. It's not that she's trying to catch you in something, it's that she's trying to figure out where she lost you. She's searching for the moment when everything shifted, the reason the warmth faded, the cause of the emotional distance, and here's the part most don't see. She's not doing this because she's weak, she's doing it because she once believed this was real, because she gave you the best parts of her attention, her vulnerability, her time. And now she's trying to understand whether it's still safe to give any more. It's in this phase that she may seem distant herself, but she's not disengaged. She's calculating, she's putting the puzzle together, she's not asking you to fix it, not yet, because she's still deciding whether this is even worth saving. That's the part you don't realize in the moment. You think she's being quiet, maybe even cold, but she's being careful. She's gathering emotional data. You used to feel like home to her, now you feel like a stranger wearing the same face. She watches the shift in how you prioritize her. Once you went out of your way, now everything feels like an inconvenience. She doesn't ask for grand gestures, just presence, just effort. But when that disappears, she notices, not because she's needy, but because she remembers how things used to be. She notices when you stop saying good morning. She notices when your compliments become generic. She notices when you stop being curious about her thoughts, her day, her heart. What she's trying to figure out now is this temporary, or is this the new version of you, the version that's already 1 foot out the door? And while she's doing this, she's not broadcasting her emotions. She doesn't want to seem dramatic. She doesn't want to push you further away. So instead, she becomes quiet, she moves inward, she starts examining herself too. Is she asking too much? Is she being too sensitive? Did she miss something important along the way? There's a storm of questions happening inside her, and yet on the surface, you might not notice a thing. That's the danger of emotional disconnect. It doesn't always look loud, sometimes it's wrapped in silence and soft smiles that no longer reach her eyes. But something is shifting inside her with every moment she spends watching. She's collecting evidence, not to use against you, but to decide what she needs to do for herself. And this part of the journey is the quiet before the storm, not the destructive kind, but the kind where clarity hits. And once that clarity comes, once she finally sees that your heart is no longer in it, she starts to accept it. That acceptance doesn't come with screaming or slamming doors, it comes with a calm detachment, because the woman who once leaned in is now leaning back, not out of spite, but out of wisdom. She gave you her presence, her softness, her care, and now that she sees you pulling away, she's learning to match your energy, not to hurt you but to heal herself. And by the time you realize she's pulled away too, it's not because she never noticed, it's because she noticed everything. At some point in the silence, in the shift, in the watching, something deeper begins to stir inside her. She's no longer just trying to understand you. She's starting to wrestle with something far more personal, herself, because when a woman realizes you're no longer interested, it doesn't just create distance between you, it creates conflict within her. A quiet war between what she believed, what she gave, and what she's starting to feel in return. And that war starts with one aching question: was I not enough? This isn't about vanity, it's about vulnerability. About how deeply she let you in. You may not have seen it clearly, but letting someone into her heart wasn't easy. It cost her courage, it cost her softness, it cost her safety. So when she feels that pullback, when she senses that withdrawal of emotional presence, she doesn't just feel rejected, she feels exposed. That's what makes it sting. It's not about the relationship ending, it's about what she revealed in herself while believing this was something real. That inner voice starts asking if she gave too much, opened too early, loved too deeply, not because love is a mistake, but because now she wonders if it was received at all. She replays moments, conversations, gestures, smiles she gave when no one was watching. She doesn't regret them, but now in your distance, she questions their worth. That's the first phase of emotional identity conflict, when the value she once saw in the relationship gets tangled up with the value she sees in herself. And that confusion isn't weakness, it's heartbreak doing its slow, deliberate work. But here's where everything changes. That woman, the one sitting in the middle of doubt, questioning her worth, wondering what she missed, she doesn't stay there. She doesn't live in that version of herself. Something in her begins to rise, not out of anger, not out of revenge, but out of quiet clarity. She realizes the disconnection she's feeling isn't a reflection of who she is, it's a reflection of where you are. It's not about her failing, it's about your fading, and that's when she starts separating her value from your interest. And once that line is drawn, even just a little, everything inside her begins to shift. She starts to see her emotions not as a weakness, but as a mirror, showing her where she needs healing, not fixing. She begins to reclaim her presence, even if it's shaky at first. She doesn't do it with loud declarations or sudden detachment. No, it starts in the smallest ways. She stops waiting for the late text. She stops shrinking when she feels your indifference. She stops holding space for someone who doesn't show up fully. Slowly, almost silently, she begins to remember herself. It's subtle, this evolution, but it's powerful, because the same woman who once questioned if she was enough begins to ask a different question. Why was I trying so hard for someone who stopped trying for me? And the moment she asks that with honesty, she steps into a new version of herself. A version that no longer performs for attention, a version that doesn't overextend just to feel chosen, a version that understands that being loved should never feel like proving your worth. This is when her strength becomes undeniable. You may still be around physically, you may still be talking, texting, going through the motions. But she's no longer emotionally present in the same way. She's awake now, not just to your disinterest, but to her own capacity for love, and how sacred that really is. She starts honoring it, guarding it, not out of fear, but out of wisdom, because once she sees that her love was given with honesty and received with apathy, she stops begging for breadcrumbs. She starts asking herself what it would look like to be met with the same energy she offers. This is how a woman rises from emotional confusion. Not by forgetting what happened, but by facing it with open eyes and choosing not to let it define her. She becomes someone you recognize but can no longer access in the same way. She doesn't chase closure, she becomes her own closure. She doesn't wait to feel worthy again, she remembers that she always was, and that's the most powerful shift of all. By the time you finally notice her pulling away, not just physically, but spiritually, you're not watching the same woman anymore. You're watching someone who gave you a seat at her table, and now she's realized you didn't bring anything to it. She's not bitter, she's just done confusing your silence with something she needs to fix, because now she's choosing herself. And once she chooses herself, there's no going back. There comes a moment when everything inside her stops reaching. The calls become fewer, the texts shorter, the check-ins quieter, but it's not about playing games, it's not about revenge. It's about reality finally catching up to her heart. She's been holding on, maybe not to you, but to the idea of what the two of you once were. She's been hoping that the shift she feels is temporary, that your absence is circumstantial, but once it becomes clear that your energy is no longer with her, something inside begins to settle. And in that stillness, she finally lets go of the chase. This isn't passive, it's powerful. It's the moment she stops chasing something that's not chasing her back. Not because she's cold, but because she's clear. Clarity changes everything. She's no longer fueled by confusion or emotional hunger. Now she's fueled by something else, by the realization that love should never feel one-sided, by the understanding that the more she gives in this space, the more she loses herself. You may think she's being distant. You may wonder why she stopped calling, why she's not asking about your day, why her voice sounds more grounded than eager. But what you're witnessing is a woman pulling her energy inward. For too long, she extended herself, made excuses, tried to keep something alive that was already wilting in your hands. And now she's tired, not dramatically, not with resentment, but with a kind of weariness that only shows up after you've given your heart to someone who no longer knows what to do with it. So she stops trying to be understood, stops over-explaining her need, stops trying to read between your silences, because now she sees your silence for what it is, a choice. And once she understands that, she makes a new choice too, one that's not rooted in proving her worth or fixing what's broken, but one rooted in peace, in self-respect, in wholeness. This moment, this emotional pivot, is where the entire dynamic changes. She goes from seeking connection to seeking understanding. She stops asking what she can do to win you back and starts asking what she was giving up to keep you near. She begins to take her power back not through resistance, but through reflection, and that reflection doesn't lie. It shows her all the ways she made space for someone who didn't want to stay. It reveals how she softened for someone who met her with apathy. It exposes the imbalance she kept justifying, and now she sees it, all of it. She doesn't need to shout. She doesn't need to make a scene. She just stops giving more than she receives, stops leaning in when you lean out, stops filling every gap with hope, and in that stopping, she begins to rise. What used to keep her up at night, the unanswered text, the shift in your tone, the feeling that she was slowly being erased, those things no longer grip her the same way. Not because they stopped hurting, but because she stopped believing that your inconsistency defined her. She's not building walls. She's building awareness, and with every moment she spends reflecting instead of reaching, she starts to feel herself again. This is the reversal of energy. It's subtle, but it's real. You won't always see it at first, but you'll feel it. The woman who once checked in now checks out. The woman who once poured into you is now pouring back into herself. The attention you used to receive so freely now feels rare, not because she's punishing you, but because she's learning to protect what she gave away too easily. Her heart. And here's what most people don't understand. When a woman gets quiet, it's not always because she's lost. Sometimes it's because she's found something more valuable than your attention, her peace, and once she feels what it's like to sit with herself, without begging for your presence, she starts to realize that peace is far more nourishing than your occasional affection. That's when you'll feel the shift, not in something she says, but in the absence of what she used to offer. The excitement in her voice, the softness in her texts, the effort in her time, it fades not out of bitterness but out of balance. She's giving herself what she hoped to receive from you, and now, her silence isn't emptiness, it's a boundary. You may still try to reach for her in moments, assuming she'll respond the way she used to. But she won't, because once she's had enough space to reflect, she doesn't need to be drawn back into the same cycle. The woman who once waited is now walking. The woman who once questioned herself is now clear, and clarity changes how she shows up, not just for you, but for herself. And by the time you recognize how far she's gone, you'll realize it was never about her losing interest. It was about her finding out that yours was already gone. There's something incredibly powerful about the quiet after heartbreak. It's the space where everything seems to stand still, but under the surface, everything is moving, and that's exactly what happens to her. When she finally stops chasing your attention, when she stops searching for signs that you still care, a different kind of energy starts to build. At first it looks like sadness, it looks like silence, but what it really is transformation. She doesn't announce it. She doesn't post about it, she doesn't make a dramatic exit. Instead, she begins to turn inward. She starts asking deeper questions, not about you, but about herself. What did this experience reveal? What did she ignore? What did she settle for? And when those questions start rolling in, she doesn't look away from them. She leans in, because this time, it's not about getting someone back, it's about getting herself back. The very pain that once made her feel small is now shaping her into someone more solid, more aware, more centered. She starts seeing clearly, not just where things went wrong, but where she stopped listening to her own needs. That moment where she felt overlooked, abandoned, or replaced, it cuts deep, but instead of burying it, she learns from it. It becomes a mirror, one that reflects not just the reality of your disinterest, but also the parts of her that need healing, care, and rebuilding. And that rebuilding, it's slow, but it's sacred. She doesn't try to become someone else, she doesn't start pretending she never cared. She just begins the quiet work of rising, piece by piece, day by day. She reconnects with the things that make her feel grounded, her passions, her values, her voice. The version of herself that used to tiptoe around your moods now walks with more certainty. The version of herself that once held her breath, hoping not to lose you, now breathes fully because she knows she has herself. And that's the difference. That's what real healing looks like. It's not loud, it's not linear, it's not glamorous. It's that moment when she wakes up and chooses not to check her phone, not to wait for your name to pop up, not to keep a window open for someone who already closed the door. It's not about bitterness, it's not about pretending she never wanted you. It's about finally accepting that wanting someone is not the same as being valued by them. There's a quiet resilience that grows in this stage, and the thing is, you probably won't see it happening. From the outside, it might still look like she's figuring things out, but inside, something is forming, a new standard. A new rhythm, a new sense of self-respect that doesn't ask, "Will you choose me?" but instead says, "I choose me." She starts showing up differently, for herself, for her future. She lets go of the version of her that molded around you and starts returning to the version of her that feels honest, whole, and undivided. She doesn't need closure from you anymore, because she's given it to herself through the process of reflection, release, and growth. Every unanswered question starts to lose its grip. Every memory begins to soften. What once felt like rejection now feels like redirection. The woman you once knew, the one who waited for text, the one who gave endless chances, the one who made excuses for your inconsistency, she's not coming back. Not because she doesn't care, but because she finally cares about herself more. She's not building walls, she's building a life. One that doesn't shrink around another person's inability to love her well. You may start to notice the difference. Her energy isn't on you anymore, her thoughts aren't wrapped around what went wrong, and the light you once dimmed. It's coming back on, brighter and stronger, but it's no longer facing in your direction. She's no longer motivated by the hope of being seen. She's motivated by the truth that she sees herself now, and here's what's hard to admit. What once drew you in may still be there, but it's no longer available to you. Because now she knows better, now she loves smarter, now she understands that love should never feel like convincing someone to say. She's not angry, she's not cold, she's just done giving chances to someone who didn't know what to do with the first one. And all of that strength, the kind you don't always recognize in the beginning, was born out of the very moment you began pulling away. That's the irony. Your absence gave her the space to find herself again, and the version of her that comes out on the other side. She's not just stronger, she's untouchable, because now your silence has no power over her peace. At some point, after all the silence, the distance, the wondering and replaying, she stops waiting for an explanation. She stops hoping for clarity from you, not because she's finally gotten the answers, but because she's realized she doesn't need them anymore. That's the shift most people never notice. They assume she's still holding on because she's quiet, because she hasn't said goodbye in a way that makes it obvious. But the truth is, by the time she stops asking questions, she's already made peace with your silence. She gave you space to speak, she gave you time to show up, she opened the door for real conversation. But when that space remained empty, she started to see it for what it really was, not a pause, not a misunderstanding, not a rough patch, but a message. A message that didn't come in words, but one that spoke just as clearly. You were done, you just didn't say it out loud. And that's what she learned to hear. It's not that she didn't want to know why. Every part of her wanted a reason, something that made sense, something that could help her close the chapter with understanding. But that reason never came. You kept it vague, you stayed emotionally distant, you drifted instead of deciding. And for a while that kept her stuck, waiting for something that wasn't coming. Closure, truth, acknowledgement. She thought if she just held on a little longer, maybe you'd say the one thing that would make it all make sense. But here's the thing, she got tired of carrying the weight of a conversation you were never willing to have. Tired of chasing peace in a place where peace was never going to live. She started to see that your silence was the closure. That your lack of effort, your absence of care, your inconsistency, that was the answer. And when she finally accepted that, something clicked. She no longer needed the apology, she no longer needed the final talk. Because now she understood something far more important, that closure doesn't always come from the person who hurt you. Sometimes it comes when you finally stop trying to understand their choices and start choosing your own healing. It didn't happen all at once. There were days she still wanted to reach out, still felt the temptation to ask why. But she didn't, because now, every time she thought about reopening that door, she remembered how it felt when she stood in front of it for so long knocking, and no one answered. And that memory, that's what gave her the strength to walk away without needing a goodbye. You see, people think closure is this big moment. Some final conversation, a perfectly worded explanation, but for her, it was quiet. It happened in the little things. The day she stopped checking your profile, the moment she deleted your number, the time she heard your name and didn't flinch. It wasn't dramatic, it was deliberate, and it was hers. She made peace not by understanding you, but by forgiving herself, for staying too long, for believing too much, for ignoring the signs she didn't want to see. That forgiveness was her freedom. It allowed her to stop waiting, stop wondering, and start healing. She stopped blaming herself for your detachment and started rebuilding the trust she had in herself. And here's the most beautiful part. She didn't become bitter. She didn't build walls so no one could ever get in again. No, she became wiser, softer, but stronger, more careful, but still open. She didn't let what you didn't give ruin what she still had to offer. Because she knows now, the right person won't leave her guessing. They won't make her beg for clarity or fight for connection. They'll show up fully, honestly, consistently. That's what she's saving herself for now, and that's why she doesn't need anything from you. Not an explanation, not a second chance, not even acknowledgement. She's moved on, not because it didn't matter, but because she does. Her healing is no longer dependent on what you do or don't say. It's rooted in who she's become in the aftermath. And maybe one day you'll realize that. Maybe you'll think back and wonder why she never reached out, why she stopped trying, why she walked away so quietly. And when that moment comes, you'll understand she didn't need closure from you, because she found something better. She found peace within herself. If this message hit something deep within you, don't scroll past it. Share this with someone who needs to hear it. Leave a comment if you've lived it. And if you're on your healing journey, remember, your silence can be your strength, and your peace is your power. Subscribe for more real conversations that speak to the heart.